Welcome to the Inked Film Podcast, where we read the book.
And then see the movie.
I'm Luke.
And I'm James.
And this week we discuss Level 3 of Ernest Cline's 2011 novel, Ready Player One. Now let's find an internet cafe with a secure connection and log back into the Oasis. Crystal key unlocked. So we finished the book. What'd you think of it, James?
Man, I like that this book is sectioned out into level 1, level 2, and level 3, because level 3 is much different than level 2 and level 1. And all in all, I had a great time with this. It's just fun. It's just a fun story, easy to read. A lot of references to be like, oh, I know that, and kind of just get that hit of nostalgia.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's been a recurring theme for us. I think we've many times said how this book is fun, you know? So I think that's kind of the main takeaway of our reaction to it, is that we enjoy it and we think it's kind of a light romp, but, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's clearly written to have mass appeal and to not be a very challenging book. I don't think anything in the plot is particularly challenging either. And, you know, it wears its, you know, geekdom on its sleeve, and whether or not you enjoy that, I think, you know, might fall down to just personal taste and whether or not you connect with a lot of the titles being, you know, bandied around. I've been doing a lot of research outside of the book itself since I had time. And so first off, I really looked into Ernest Cline's contest that he ran with this. I teased it, I think, in the first episode, and I said I was going to look into it more, and I did. And we can get into some of the details of that, but they're also maybe a little bit spoilery if you wanted to try and do it yourself. So I don't know if we should like save that for maybe later, or if you want me to talk about some of it now. What do you think? Yeah,
let's save it till we get further into the story, just to finish everything out.
Yeah, so people can look forward to that. Also, I did a lot of research into. There's been this big backlash to this book. And there's a lot of hate going around on the internet, or just anger, I guess, about it. And I really wanted to get to, because like I knew a lot of it, and I've touched on it, I think, throughout our coverage. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to get more into like the reasoning behind it, I guess. And I found out a lot about that. But I want to save that for the end as well, I think, because I want to just continue through with our take on it. You know what I mean? It's like kind of before I read all of this, and then at the end I can kind of present it to you, and you can tell me if that affects your opinion of this book or what you think of it.
Sounds good. I feel like when this book came out was the kind of the perfect time for it to come out, because I feel like there was like peak nostalgia going on in the industry and with everything that was coming out entertainment wise. I feel strongly that if I had read it then, I would like it even more than I like it now, because like we've gotten other things that have done similar things, like your Stranger Things and a lot of these things that are nostalgia fests. And I feel like I should just say that like I still embrace it and I still love it. But a couple of years ago, if I had just read the book when it first came out, I would have really like this would have been one of my favorite books, just because it's like the stuff that I love, you know, and it's like the stories that I like and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like I don't know, I've read it twice now. I'm aware of a lot of the controversy. And yeah, I mean, I still enjoy the book. I think it's going to fall down to, like we said, personal preference and how much you're willing to take the book for what it is, I guess, and whether or not you're going to embrace it or reject it. You know what I mean? Because I think there's going to be a lot of like, you're going to have a visceral reaction to it early on. And if your visceral reaction is to be against it, you're going to hate the whole experience. You know what I mean? So a lot of it's going to come down to that. But I can't really get into more of the reasons without really getting over the, talking about the controversy with you. But I do want to save that for the end, because, like I said, I don't want it to affect our coverage. I feel like I want to ride through our coverage and have it be pure in the sense that it was before I did all this research.
Yeah, let's just run into the coverage then and get through it so that we can talk about all that.
Cool. Okay, so we start off level 3 with Wade in his apartment, and we learned that IOI is coming for him. Like they're coming to arrest him, right?
Right. I did not think that his plan was going to be like this, because remember we talked about what was the plan going to be. I thought we were just going to stay in the Oasis. And
right.
So yeah, I was like, holy shit, they're coming for him. How do they know where he's at? And like, I'm like, they drop you right into it.
Yeah. So yeah, it honestly, the scene is very reminiscent of something out of a Minority Report, in my opinion. We got these drop cops, and they come in, and I don't know. That's what I thought of, at least. And they cut through his wall and basically put a bag on his head and take him to this. Well, they don't actually. But they haul him out as to become what we learned is called an indentured servant, essentially, for IOI, because he's got this credit card debt that he hasn't paid off. We learn later it's fake anyway. But the idea is that IOI, if you don't pay your debts to them, that they literally can come and abduct you and bring you to their facility and make you work for them to pay off your debt. And we also learned that this is something they do a lot, and that people don't ever actually pay off their debt, and that they become slaves.
Right, yeah. IOI has it set up to where once you pay all your bills, your housing, your food, all that, health insurance, that kind of thing, after all of that's paid for, you end up with like no money, so it's really hard to pay your debt back, so you can really never get out of it.
And so this is just like further, making IOI into this like terrible force that's kind of taking advantage of people, and it's fun to hate. They go downtown, and so as they take Wade downtown, he sees their skyscrapers, and they're literally shaped like IOI, like it's like two like long ones and then one circular one, mm-hmm. And they're these massive buildings, which I thought was kind of funny. Which IOI, when you write it out, it also kind of looks like 101, which would be like coding. So mm-hmm. I don't know if that was intended or not, but did you think of that?
Yeah, I kept seeing IOI in my notes whenever I would write it out, and it's just like it's very like, very binary.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. How in on it were you, where you're like, okay, he's clearly planned this? I guess like he kind of reveals early on, like, this is all part of the plan.
I knew that it was part of the plan. Like I knew that they were, well, so they dropped us into it, and they're coming into his apartment, and then like basically as soon as they put him in the car, we kind of know that like this was planned. And then he mm-hmm. gets to the facility, and that's when we start to like, not until he's like in the cell do we really understand what the whole plan is.
Right. Yeah, he gets, well, like you just said, he kind of gets like put through this process of, and this is all in the real world. I don't know if we established that enough. This is not in the Oasis. This is all Wade Watts, who is being arrested as Bryce, his alias, and this is all something he's orchestrated, and he gets put through this like introduction, whatever they call it, like when you're at work and they're teaching you how to do it. What's
like that called? Training videos, or just like,
yeah.
But he kind of sees it as brainwashing propaganda.
Yeah, for sure. And so he goes through this process, but you can tell like he kind of knew it was coming, but maybe not like exactly. He literally gets put on a conveyor belt and like deloused and like washed and all this stuff, and like he's given a new outfit, and like I don't know, it was almost kind of comical a little bit, but it's all automated, I guess, is the implication there. Mm-hmm. So it's also super dehumanizing, obviously, and they put him in this like little like coffin sized thing that he basically lives in, where he sleeps. There's like controlled television that he can only watch one channel, and it's this like introductory video over and over again, or something, and it's hell.
There's some weird sitcom that's like specifically like it's supposed to be a sitcom for entertainment, but it's like really at the end of the day it's just propaganda brainwashing for IOI. And this episode actually makes
it's called Tommy Q, and it's literally like a laugh track over a guy who's like bumbling around and doing things wrong and having to learn the right way to do things
in this job at IOI. Like he's doing the same job, right? Yeah, and this kind of episode, this kind of reminded me of an episode of Black Mirror where they're forced to like
don't
ride.
Spoil it for me.
Have you? Oh, okay, you might not have seen it. So it's basically
no. Actually, I think I know what you're talking about. Where they're riding the bikes.
Exactly. Yeah. And then they like are
actually
forced
have seen that episode. But we shouldn't we shouldn't spoil what happens in the episode.
It's similar. It reminded me of it.
Yeah. It's like they have to earn credits and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, you're right. That is really similar to it. So yeah, we learned that he gets a job because he doesn't want to work in the oology division, which is where his skills would really lie. because he wants to, he doesn't want to be spotted by Sorrento or whatever. So instead, he takes these tests and he excels in tech support, which we know he's been doing before. And retroactively, I wonder if maybe he included that to like support this thing.
Yeah.
Which maybe you say that's a little bit of a plot hole because that didn't really feel like it should be something he had to do. Mm-hmm. But like I said, this we've said before, this book isn't really gonna hold up to like really strict, stringent analysis and like that. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna fall apart, of course.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like it's just like suspension of disbelief. Like, yeah, maybe he did need to do the tech support just to make ends meet, but it's helpful for the end of the story, so you can kind of see where it's threading through.
Right. So he has this whole plan. I guess I won't get into the whole intricacies of it, but he's basically has bought these black market codes that he can use to get admin privileges in their intranet, and he's able to get a bunch of data mine. He also is able to make it so that his like anklet and ear thing can come off, and he can set up he has this plan to infiltrate their system and hack into it and all this stuff, right? And the way it plays out is he eventually gets into this data and he finds out where they're at with the key. He essentially finds out that Sorrento has made it to the gate with the key, but they can't figure out how to open the gate. Like all the other gates just open when you walk up, when you like put the key in, but this one doesn't. And Sorrento can't figure out why not. And the Sixers are working on it, and they're getting really desperate. We learned that it has 3 words over it, which I have written down somewhere. It's like charity. Do you remember? Hope and
something else. It was from Schoolhouse Rock, which I never really saw a lot of that. I think I saw like the I'm Just a Bill one, and that's really the only Schoolhouse Rock I know.
Yeah. I know I saw some back in school, but I actually do remember this particular song, but I just don't remember it that well.
Yeah.
Clearly. Anyway, I'll find it in my notes eventually, but so he kind of thinks he knows how that this is going to work, but they're stuck on it now. He also gets the personal data that they have collected on each of them. And this is really interesting. He finds Artemis's first off. He does see a picture of her, and we learned that she looks a lot like her avatar, except for she has this like certain kind of birthmark on her face. What did you think? How did that? I mean, that you did kind of call it, I guess. Is that what you were kind of thinking was going to happen?
I mean, I had no idea. She kept saying stuff about being disfigured or being like disabled in some way, so I didn't know what to expect. But it just seemed like that's where the story would end up. Is just like he sees her and he loves her anyway, regardless of however she looks.
Yeah. I mean, you can kind of, like if you haven't identified that this book is about wish fulfillment, that this book is about, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
This book is pure wish fulfillment. You know what I mean?
It's like a fairy tale. You're going to have a good time and you're going to be happy.
Yeah. So of course, like that's going to be the happiest, I guess, outcome. I don't know. You can argue that, I guess. But like, yeah, I guess I kind of saw that coming too. Maybe I would have liked it to be subverted a little more, mm-hmm. Like maybe a little more challenging if she wasn't, just exactly like her avatar with like a birthmark or something. Like if it was something a little more different than that. That could have been something that maybe a little more challenging, but also, I can see it maybe, you're changing a book that was hugely popular. So I don't know. It's just going to fall down to personal preference and the preference of the writer, I guess.
Yeah.
What kind of story you're trying to tell. So then he also finds out about H a little bit, although it seems that H, they don't know hardly anything at all about H, because he's on the move, and they just have a picture of his avatar. And all this stuff. I should say for Artemis, they had her under surveillance. Like they know where her house is, and they've been watching her and all this stuff.
Yeah, same goes for Shoto as well.
And yeah, Shoto as well. And then he watches the video on Daito, and it shows literally like a first-person guy with a camera recording them killing Daito,
throwing him off
the building. Now, why would they record it? I don't know. It seems like that's a pretty incriminating video to make.
You know how like sometimes like people in power will have like a live feed to the soldiers on the ground, maybe of something like that, and it just like...
That was the implication, I think, that, I guess maybe they were so confident that it would never get out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the only real explanation you can give for it, because otherwise it seems like a pretty dumb thing to record if you're going to go murder a citizen,
For sure.
you know what I mean, illegally.
Yeah.
Just like, make sure you record that just in case for posterity. But yeah, so he finds that, which he then downloads. So he gets all this data.
Yeah, honestly though, rip Daito, man. Like, he's a badass, and I wish he wouldn't have actually died in the real. That was honestly probably the biggest hit. Like, I didn't really care. I mean, I don't feel like we're not supposed to because they don't treat him well, but the aunt dying wasn't much, but Daito is, like, actually a big hit in the story.
Yeah, I think Mrs. G is the only other, like, person that even has a name that we really care about that dies, maybe.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because she's nice to Wade, I guess. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think Daito's death is it is like the, like, kind of black moment, like, well, not really, but it is kind of the emotional moment, I guess, of the book.
Yeah.
Now that he knows all this about how closely they're being monitored, he's like, well, I have to act more quickly than I originally intended. He had this whole plan where he was going to get his debt paid off and then get, like, automated discharge, but instead he has to orchestrate this, escape, which is kind of a fun escape from the place moment. So he hacks into the system, sets his debt balance to 0, and then he, like, disables his, ear gear and anklet, and he has this security outfit that he's stowed away. He puts that on, and he looks like he's, a security, like, maintenance guy, I guess. And he heads out. He encounters all these other people who, like, work there for their actual day jobs and aren't indentured servants. And one of them, like, stops him and says, "Oh, your ear's bleeding." But other than that, he kind of doesn't really get noticed, even though he's wearing these, like, plastic slippers. And I don't know, it was kind of a tense moment, but nothing really bad happens. It just works. And at one point he records himself, like, flipping off a camera because he knows Sorrenta's going to see it later. So that was fun.
That was pretty funny. I thought for sure he was going to get caught here. Like, I was predicting, I was like, there's no way he makes it out of here scot-free. But he totally hit the plan.
But he does.
Yeah, the plan goes off without a hitch.
Yeah, basically, exactly as planned. So he gets out and he goes to this mailbox where he's sent to the mailbox, like, a basically, like, top of the line portable Oasis rig that he's able to log back into the Oasis with. And this is the first time he's back in Parzival in, like, a week. So he kind of reappears back online. He sees he has all these messages from the high four, I guess now, and he responds to them, and he tells each of them about the plans that the Sixers have. There was also a big plan that he found in there where they were going to abduct Artemis and Shoto and force them to help them open the gate and then murder them after they are done. Mm-hmm. So that's the Sixer plan, and they're, like, about to do it.
Right. He also, like, gets away with a bunch of files. He has, like, a hard drive full of files, basically.
Yeah, some insane amount of data.
Yeah, like Zigabyte or something. I forget what they actually say.
I don't remember either. Yeah, it's a lot, though. Then he erases Bryce Lynch, and he becomes Wade Watts again with his, like, scans and everything. So he has, like, quite a bit of hacking chops, which seemed a little bit to come out of nowhere. But, like, I buy it just enough because a lot of people who do, like, a lot of this kind of stuff, like, do know how to hack at least a little bit, and are, like, computer programmers and stuff. So, I buy it. But he does have, like, some pretty impressive hacking chops, I guess. And he's able to, like, hack databases and change his identity and all of this stuff, right?
I actually did like the changing the identity and then being able to flip back, and that was a cool, like, because I felt like that was earned because he planted that early on with having to change his identity when he first ran away, and then he he used that alias as, like, a throwaway person that he was able to do all this stuff with. It was cool.
Yeah, so there's this weird thing where he gets, like, a gun and, like, armor, like, flak vest and all this stuff. Yeah,
was that supposed to be to create tension? Because I didn't understand.
Yeah, I don't know, because it doesn't go anywhere. Right. He never uses it. so it felt kind of like a story thread that Cline put in with the expectation that he was eventually going to use it, and then in the course of writing it, just, like, never used it, and then, I don't know. It almost felt weird to keep it in there, I guess.
Yeah, maybe
it feels like Chekhov's gun that never gets fired.
Exactly.
I guess,
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is that it feels like he's like he's maybe trying to subvert the idea that, like, if there is a gun, it has to go off. So maybe, like, we're supposed to be anticipating it and subverting expectations.
I mean, maybe. Chekhov's gun. I mean, I could do the whole thing about that. It's not really about a gun. It's more of a storytelling principle. But yeah, in this situation, he has this thing that you go, oh, this is, and then just nothing happens with it. And it also is I don't know. There is a little bit about like, it's from a vending machine, yet he still has to have his like criminal history scanned and like all this. It actually seems like it's kind of hard to get it, and then it has like a 12-hour cooling off period before you can fire it, and it gets linked to his DNA. So there's kind of some interesting gun tech in there that maybe Cline wanted to talk about that could potentially make things more safe. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I could see that.
I don't know, but still he gets it pretty easily. So that's the other side of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, just because gun control is a pretty hot button thing right now. It's something I noticed. So he does go to a internet cafe called The Plug, and he drops $11,000 on reserving the like highest end, most deluxe version of the room for the Oasis that has like super crazy gear and the biggest fattest pipe connection that he can money can buy, and yeah, I don't know, some insane amount of money, but he has it.
The store clerk is like, yeah, if you're good for $11,000 or whatever, and he's like surprised when it goes through.
Well, I mean, also like, this is another example of Wade having a lot of money where he wouldn't need to be doing a low-end tech support job. But anyway, we'll move on.
Yep.
This is all from his endorsements. This is the only reason this makes sense, right? Like, he has money now.
Right.
Once he gets in there, he uploads all the data to the Oasis. So now it's like backed up, I guess, online. And he emails all major news outlets with the video of the murder of Daito. And also the recording of Sorrento talking to him, in which he threatens to murder him and blows up the stack. So pretty incriminating stuff, right? Mm-hmm. He drafts an email that he says is going to be for every Oasis user, and we don't get the content of it yet. And then he goes to the basement to meet with the High Four. So now that he's done this whole gambit, like, what did you think in general of the gambit, I guess, of this whole thing? Was it like, did it feel clever? Did it feel... I mean, you said it was surprising, right?
Right. It was definitely surprising. I said in an earlier episode that like when we come out of the Oasis, I felt like that was the weaker stuff. Like that was the stuff that I didn't want to, and maybe purposely didn't want to have in the story. Like I was just like, oh man, I want to get back to the Oasis. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of this chapter, I was like, shit, we're gonna be out in the real world as I started level 3. And I think by the end of it, I was like, oh, that was a fun little side story of stuff that he did. It seemed like a crazy plan to me. Like, seemed like he really well executed because he pulled it off with all these variables that could have gone extremely poorly. But I don't know. I think it was cool to see something. I think it was cool to see Wade do something cool in the real instead of just his Oasis character doing cool stuff. I
think narratively, it's pretty important to kind of reestablish the outside world and how important it is and the existence of it. And he also drives through the city at times and sees all these people who are really poor and huddled around, these like burning, barrels or whatever you want to call it, like little portable heaters, whatever. He just sees like kind of the misery out there, and it kind of underlines maybe the need for social change, and which, becomes important later.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think it's good to kind of ground us back in the real, especially before we have this big online thing. So speaking of that, he has the conversation with the High Four. Artemis is angry at him for looking at her file and invading her privacy.
Understandably, eventually, kind of, right?
Understandably, yeah. Like I remember when he did it, I was like, "Oh, you're gonna go ahead and look at her picture? Exactly. That's kind of shitty of you."
It just seems like, I don't know. It's just like if he was a nice guy, he wouldn't have looked. Like I guess it ended up saving her, but
I mean, I could see like accidentally because like he needed to look at the file to see what they knew about her. So like if it's just like right there as soon as you click the file, like you can't not see it. And he does end up saving their lives because he knows what they know about what the Sixers know about them, which is important. So I can see it, but like he also doesn't like say that he feels particularly bad about it.
He's pretty stoked about it. It seems like.
Yeah. So yeah. All right. Anyway, they all come around and kind of end up thanking him for what he's done. Charity, hope, and faith. Faith, I think, is the one I was forgetting there. I just found it in my notes. So they watch a video of Sorrento's trying to open it. and they're all kind of thinking about it, like what's going on. And then Wade reveals that the Schoolhouse Rock song 3 is a magic number. They realize that they have 4 copies, so when they do this big battle, which is the plan, once he gets down the gate or the shield, they're gonna have this big battle, and he's like, 3 of us need to survive and make it so that we can, because it's gonna take all 3 of us to open it.
Right.
And he's figured that out. He also is being really cagey, and he's like, oh, the shield will be down. You know what I mean? Like he's like promising that like it like, but he's not revealing how.
Yeah.
He's like I've planned it. You know what I mean? So
it'll go perfectly because I planned it.
Just for like dramatic tension, I guess, because you would think in that situation he could just explain the plan.
Right.
But instead he's like, oh, just trust me, it'll be down. So he shows them the email, and it's a call for everyone in the Oasis to fight against the Sixers. And it's like, I don't know, it's kind of cheesy almost, like it's very but then like it's kind of lampshaded by the fact that it says knavery at the beginning, and then they all make fun of him for it.
Right.
So, it's just like a call to action to fight against the stupid Sixers, right?
Yeah. They
kind of theorize, they're like, oh, I wonder if people actually show up, or if people are just gonna like come and like watch, and you know what I mean? Like, are the people actually gonna help? And they're kind of hoping that people will rally together.
And then they're like, well...
which we know is what happens.
Yeah, and then they're like, I don't even know how we're going to fight in this battle because we're all, like, homeless and on the run and stuff.
Oh, yeah. So they say that, and then... hello, it's Ogden Morrow, and I've been here listening all along.
He pops in.
He pops into existence in the basement, their private chat room, and reveals that he was behind the books toppling over, which I believe was one of your theories. You kind of brushed, like, I
don't
think you
remember
threw it
if I
out there,
said
but then
him
you brushed
specifically,
over it.
but I definitely felt like it was like something like good guys lurking in the background.
Okay, so what did you think of the reveal that it was Ogden Morrow?
I thought it was cool, but I also felt like it was like Deus Ex Machina. Like it was just like a little bit, I'm gonna save the day.
Yeah, well, and it's also it's kind of weird because it's like he's very helpful and he clearly wants them to succeed.
But he won't do anything.
And he has all these powers, but why has he waited till this moment to like reveal
Well, why
himself?
doesn't he just like,
I mean?
yeah, if it was going to be an issue, why doesn't he just like nickel and dime the Sixers while everybody else is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I get that he wants somebody else to succeed and...
Yeah. I think the defense of it is that he swore to Halliday to like uphold the spirit of his contest. So he doesn't want to like help too much.
Right.
But you could also say that the Sixers are cheating. So if he's like, you know what I mean? Like if he sabotaged the Sixers more, that would be in the spirit of helping Halliday's contest go off. So I don't know. This is the only way that it works for this story, I guess. So you have to kind of suspend disbelief.
Yeah. There's a broken ass artifact that he could have taken out of play that would have made the game a little more fair.
Artifact OP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please nerf. Yeah. So he shows up and he's like, oh, I have the perfect thing. He's going to charter private jets to like each of them and have them flown out to Oregon.
So funny.
Which,
he's like, Oregon,
land of Rivendell.
He's like, Oregon is beautiful this time of year. And I was just like, oh my God, I know Luke is loving this right now.
I mean, it is.
It is beautiful.
I don't know what time of year it was in the book. I think it was supposed to actually kind of cold because it was like snowing at one point or something. Yeah. But anyway.
So I'm assuming Cline, is he from Portland? He's like, because he released his book at Ground Control, right?
I don't remember. I don't remember exactly where he was from, but when we did the research, he was not born in Oregon and he lives in Austin.
Okay.
So I don't know. He's definitely been to Oregon. I know that he's been to Ground Control to do a book signing. Drove up in his DeLorean, to do it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what his connection to Portland may or may not be, but in Oregon, other than maybe just as a fan.
Yeah.
which I get.
Nice place.
H is the only person who's not going to get flown like directly is H and Wade. And he asks H like if he's willing to pick up Wade in his RV because H is like pretty nearby, and then take him to the airport where they can come together. Mm-hmm. To fly out to his house in Oregon. So that's what H agrees to do, but then he says, not yet, but so eventually H says, I don't look anything like my avatar, man, so be ready for that.
And he's cool about it. He's like, yeah, he's like, neither do I, but you're my best friend, so I'll see you soon, kind of thing.
Right. So that's the end of this meeting. Ogden leaves. And we know that all these news outlets pick up the the video and are showing it, and we hear that the accusation of murder is kind of getting bandied about in the news. And Wade goes to sleep, and a few hours later he wakes up, and H has arrived in his RV to pick him up. He climbs inside, and it's very cinematic, because he goes inside and he can't see anything, and then he has to go to the front and part the curtains, and then he sees that H is actually not a he but a she, described as a heavy-set African-American girl, and she turns around and smiles at him, and he recognizes the smile as H. He's a bit shell-shocked, but they both start laughing about it together, and they find that they're actually good friends. And he gives her a hug,
dude.
And he says oh, it doesn't matter. So what did you think of this reveal?
I personally love this part, dude. I thought it was great. Didn't see it coming. I was just assuming that he's gonna look different, but he's actually a she. And that reveal that they've been talking and hanging out for all these years, and her reasoning, the story reasons behind it, makes sense too, and it kind of calls out the bullshit that is privilege and.
Yeah, I wish it had gone farther, because I think it recognizes that's why she chose a white man avatar, right? She chose it because she found that she'll be treated differently and be afforded more privilege in the game.
Right.
The implication of that is that it's shitty and it shouldn't be that way. But it doesn't. I guess they don't really talk about. They don't have a conversation about that at all.
Yeah, I see that. I do wish that it was more emphasizing this people do have privilege, and people need to realize that things should be done in order to, in order to negate that and make it so that the others are.
There could have been. I think there could have been a really good conversation here about what it is like to be outside the white male demographic online playing video games.
Right.
And it's I feel like it's hinted at, you know what I mean? It's but it's not he doesn't really talk about it. And he doesn't talk about how shitty it must be to have to hide your identity, and why is it like that? And you know what I mean? Why does H feel, we know why it's like that, but why isn't it different? I guess. I mean, why can't it be different?
Right. Yeah, I just wish. Yeah, I think that he was doing the right thing by acknowledging it, and I, like you say, I was happy that it was acknowledged, because it felt like there was a lot of white guys in the story, and a lot. I mean, Sure. He does have Shoto and Daito, but it seemed like there was only one woman, and to have the reveal, and she's also lesbian. I thought that was. I don't know. I think that he was trying to, as a white man, I think he was trying to, like you said, I don't think it goes far enough, but I think he was trying to do something to call it out.
Yeah, and like we said in the first episode, I think, where I said I think this book has a good heart, and I think that Ernest Cline meant well when he did it, and this is one of the reasons I think that. I think that this is an attempt, right, to him to break down barriers and maybe shake some people who have these preconceived notions and go, you don't know. But there's the other side of it where you can say this also kind of smacks of the people who say race doesn't matter, and they use that as a way to discount any person of color who comes out saying this is shitty to me. And you know what I mean, they just want to say all is equal, all lives matter, exactly. That kind of stuff. Exactly, stop. Yeah. Why are you talking about Black Lives Matter? It should be all lives matter. And so I can also see that if you could read this as that kind of thing too, it's he's oh, it doesn't matter because you've basically pretended you're a white dude all along, so that we're good to go.
I think it just has something to do with people not acknowledging their privilege and just saying
right.
Oh, we should all be equal, while also being people who've been treated well for their whole lives. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I wanted more of an introspective moment from Wade where he maybe recognizes what she's had to go through, and the culture that exists online on the Oasis that has made her have to pretend she's a white man, and maybe have a moment where he's that's really shitty, and I've never had to experience that sort of discrimination, and I don't know. I just feel like there could have been more here, I guess, and ultimately we'll get into the controversy later, I think a lot of the controversy could have been not necessarily negated, but it could have been softened a little bit if there had been more in this moment. This could have been a moment where it could have done more, I guess. So, but let's move on. So next up, they all arrive basically. Oh, well, I guess I should go more into. So H is actually Helen Harris, and we didn't talk about it, but she says that what happened was she was raised, and her mother was like, oh, if you make a white man avatar, people treat you better online. And so she did that.
Her mom knew that from experience because her mom was like
from experience
doing business in the Oasis, and she was had a white man avatar and realized the privilege that a white man gets and was able to manipulate that and use that to her advantage.
Yeah, and then at some point, Helen comes out as gay, but that her mother was like not okay with that, and so like many people do, and you know many teens do often, got kicked out of her house and became like a homeless, on the run kind of LGBT community member. You know what I mean? Like that's like something that happens a lot. I know in Portland, like that's a lot of the younger homeless here. It's a similar kind of situation. People have been kicked out of their homes by parents who are not okay with their sexual orientation.
Yeah, he kind of makes a comment about how H's mother recognized these prejudices that people had towards, you know, African American women, and yet she still had her own prejudices towards you know, sexual orientation and that kind of thing. So I that's something else I feel like he was bringing attention to, is like.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's good. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I like the idea of like some person can be forward thinking in one way, but not in another.
Right.
You know, and that can cause all this problem. So, that's you know her life story, which she reveals on their plane ride over to Ogden Morrow's home. When they land there, they see that it is basically this giant floodlit mansion that is made to look like exactly like Rivendell out of Fellowship of the Ring, which, and maybe we should just announce now, is going to be our next project. We decided we're gonna do that. They finally got a release date for Fahrenheit 451, so we knew that we are going to be able to fit in Fellowship of the Ring. We'll do that as a standalone project, read the book, see the movie, and then we will get into Fahrenheit 451 after that.
Yeah, so that's like our next month or so of stuff. So
I think 2 months. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be a good bit of content.
I'm so excited for Fellowship. It's one of my favorite stories and movies, so I'm really excited for that one. And I just had a similar situation flying into Oregon as they are having. You know what I mean? Seeing Oregon for the first time and seeing the waterfalls and the mountains, and it's very foresty. So, I mean, I was like, oh, what is this, Rivendell? And then they said it. Yeah.
Looks like Middle Earth, right? Mm-hmm. There's a place here called the Gorge that I always think of. Yeah, always think of Middle Earth when I drive through that. So, but yeah, so Ogden Morrow's got this crazy mansion that he's made look like this. He shows up and he's there in like a plaid bathrobe and bunny slippers. So he's kind of like a funny, eccentric billionaire. I don't know, lovable guy. Do you know who plays him in the movie? Have you seen?
I don't think so.
Simon Pegg.
Oh, okay. Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, he plays Ogden Morrow.
I love Simon Pegg.
So it'll be interesting to see, how he's portrayed in the movie. And so he takes him inside, and he has this super geeky house that like he literally takes a torch off the wall and walks him, down a hallway and all this stuff. And they have these super state of the art. And when I say state of the art, this is the most state of the art rooms for the rigs to get onto the Oasis. And he finds out that Shoto and Artemis are already there, and they're in their own rooms, but they don't want to like talk before the big battle. They want to like focus. Right. So he doesn't actually get to meet Artemis yet. And it's, and I don't know, to me, it's very clearly being saved for the end. It's like, that'll be the end when he meets her. Yeah. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, for sure.
As he's coming in, he sees Kiera Morrow's gravestone, which we know is the wife of Ogden Morrow, who died in a car crash. And we've heard something about Halliday also being in love with. And at one point he gets a kind of a private conversation with Og, and he asks about why him and Halliday had this falling out. And he reveals that essentially Halliday was overcome with jealousy once he got married to Kiera. And because of that, their like friendship fell apart. which is really shitty. And like I don't know, like I guess I can I assume this kind of stuff does happen, but like I don't know, I felt like it was a moment where it was like really sad that these two friends couldn't like find a way to keep their friendship going over this. I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely a bummer when stuff like that happens. I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I think had they both been, on his deathbed as Halliday's sick, I'm sure given the chance he would, try to have mended that friendship sooner, and all that wasted time where they could have been friends. It's just one of those things. And then to lose his wife as well, when Og loses his wife, it's like he's the only one left to carry on this legacy of Halliday stuff. And I don't know. It's cool that they come back together at the end.
I guess what I wish could have happened, I mean, obviously, like, I think narratively this makes the most sense as it did. But, what you would hope would happen is, like, so his wife died, Og-Tomorrow's wife died, and then they didn't repair the friendship then. It wasn't until Halliday got sick and set up the whole contest where before he finally reached out to Og and even revealed all of this, because Og didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
Which almost seems kind of, I don't know, maybe he just didn't know the extent of it, I guess. But yeah, like you would have hoped that when she died, like that would have been the time for Halliday to come forward and reconnect with him and maybe mend the fences. But instead, he waited until he was dying.
Yeah.
But people don't always do things that maybe are in their best interest or whatever, right?
Right.
So inside this room, it's like a giant sphere that rotates like a hamster ball, and it's the most top of the line rig, right? And I don't know if I've talked enough about it here, but there's a ton of technology that's currently in development for this like brain body interface where literal information via like electrical impulses can be sent to your brain and make you think that you are like touching something and like simulate basically the functions that our senses use to show us the world. And that technology is already being developed. You know what I mean? And I continued to be like, I think for this story to work, you have to assume that technology either isn't being used or isn't viable or too expensive or whatever it is, but there's some reason why this isn't a thing. But you would think the best way you could do it is to like Matrix style hack into basically, that's like a primitive form of it, but have some sort of interface where you are in a virtual world and like perceive it like it's like a real one.
Yeah.
But instead it's all still like just really fancy VR like headset kind of stuff.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. I think it's probably has to do with the cost, but just because it's like how cost effective could it be to give everybody something that immersive? You know what I mean? Only the richest of the rich could get a hold of that kind of technology.
Well,
even 30 years in the future.
When they started getting to the high end rigs, that was when I was surprised that we didn't get into some of that.
Yeah,
you know what
true.
I mean? Because it's like these super expensive rigs. Like instead of building an entire rotating room and like all this crazy stuff, like just have some sort of thing that's like a brain interface.
Yeah.
Now there is like there's a group of people who would never sign up to do that. You know what I mean? Like it's too, reality bending to do that. But I feel like gamers are not, these kind of gamers are not those people. Like they would probably love the chance to experience the Oasis as if it was reality fully. I think, like I said, I think it's also a narrative thing. Like this story makes more sense, I think, if you tell it this way. So next up, we have this really big fight, but I think before we get to that, let's stop and take a moment and tell you all about Audible.
Yeah, Audible is a great service that we use pretty frequently. You're able to listen to audiobooks. They have like 80,000 in their collection, and they've been nice enough to give us an affiliate link. It's audibletrial.com/ink2film. And with that, you get 30 free days to their service and one free audiobook in their collection.
Yeah, and I wanted to emphasize that you own this book. You know what I mean? This free book is yours forever. So if you cancel your subscription, it'll still be there in your library online for you to download and listen to at any time. So when we say 33 days, it's not like at the end of 30 days it expires and deletes it off your phone. You know what I mean? Like that book is yours forever.
Go get like a 200-hour book, and then you'll have it forever. Yeah. I don't know if they have that.
Well, you could get like Dance with Dragons, or like a Brandon Sanderson novel, which is probably like 40 hours. So. I think, is like a 40-hour audiobook. So there you go. Get your money's worth. Yep. But yeah, we wanted to go ahead and recommend Fellowship of the Ring because that's our next project. And we're in the story we're in right now, we're in Oregon and it looks like it. So That was going to be our recommendation. If you wanted to go ahead and get that started, listen to it. I know I've listened to some of that audiobook. I don't know the narrator's name, but he does a really good job of like capturing that Tolkien mood. So it's a fun way to experience it. And then, like I said, we've said this book we're in now is read by Will Wheaton, and I think the audiobook is like the best way to maybe enjoy this novel. But you could argue that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to the audiobook for Lord of the Rings or Fellowship specifically, but amazing story. Can't wait to get to it.
Yeah, and if you want to get that for free, and you haven't signed up for Audible yet, go ahead and sign up and make sure that you use our link here, which is audibletrial.com/ink2film. And yeah, you use that and you'll get it for free. All right, let's get back into it. So Wade has Leopardon, which he uses, and that was the robot he got, which I Googled because I didn't know who Leopardon was, and it's pretty funny. It's like it looks like a guy in a suit. You know what I mean? Like it's very clearly from a long time ago.
Yeah. Did you look fully into it? Because it was that thing that I was talking about. So it's literally this show in Japan. It's a Spider-Man show in Japan, and it's literally Spider-Man's mech that he calls over.
I did not know
that.
Yeah,
isn't it crazy?
I didn't. I guess I didn't get into it.
It's wild.
Enough.
It turns into a ship that you can fly, and then it also turns into like a mech, and it's like Spider-Man's ship. So it's pretty wild, man.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to get Iron Giant in the movie, but still, yeah, that is cool to think about.
I looked up the opening song, the theme song, and it's got like it's very 70s superhero show.
Nice. So you called that one. So yeah, he I guess I just didn't realize the connection. He basically heads to the planet, hooks up with Artemis, H, and Shoto. He finds that they all have their own mechs. I don't know if I think I wrote them all down. You can tell me which ones you knew here. Artemis is driving the female version of something called Transor Z, which is from like some anime, like fairly obscure anime.
I don't know what it's from. I don't even know if it is an anime. But
no, it was from like a manga or something.
Okay.
He says.
Cool.
I just can't remember the name of the anime, but I figured if you knew it, you would have been like, oh, but since you didn't, you probably just skimmed over it. H is in Gundam, like a Gundam mech.
Hell yeah, H. Me too, man.
Which is cool, right? Yeah, and then Shoto is in a mech called Raideen, which is from like another show about Raideen, and it's another just mech show from Japan, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not.
Were you familiar with it at all?
No.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't either. So there's also like he notices that there's no lag in this region at all, even with like hundreds of thousands of avatars here now and all this stuff going on, which
bullshit.
I think you also have to suspend disbelief a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, Ogden Morrow magic, he's making it have no lag, or you know what I mean? But also like the system would, you know what I mean?
Well,
like there is still a physical system that has to handle all of this,
so it's
right?
like servers that Halliday was working on 5 years before. And I know this is the future, but he was working on them 5 years ago. Who's upkeeping? Og maybe upkeeping them and updating and changing. Yeah. But no way.
And like
no way
literally half the population of the Oasis is in one sector right
no way
now, which is like never happened before.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what this should actually look like is if you ever like go to a raid on like Ogrimmar or something in WoW and just like everything's just lagging and like you just see people like
shooting
clipping around and then you're just dead all of a sudden. Like that's probably what should have happened. But maybe I don't know. Maybe their personal internet connection is so strong too at Ogden Morrow's house. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, but some kid in his basement on his Oasis that like shows up is like jittery, glitchy.
He's like, I'm here for the battle, and then he just lags out and then is dead.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Sorrento comes out and they kind of talk through the shield, and he's like, I don't know how you think you're getting in here, but if you do, I'm going to be ready. And he puts down his robot, and was the first one to get it, so he got the best one, I guess. And it's Mecha Godzilla, and he's literally twice the size of everybody else.
Crazy.
What did you think of this reveal?
Nuts, man. I mean, Mecha Godzilla is like end all be all.
Yeah, he's the ultimate mech, I guess.
Yeah.
So he turns into that. Oh, also, he has these 10 guys behind him, and they form mechs from Evangelion. Or I never know how to say that.
Yeah, Neon Genesis
anime, right?
Evangelion, yeah.
Neon Genesis, yeah. And then also all 5 of the Voltron tigers,
which was
I
sweet,
guess.
Dude.
Right?
I was stoked for that.
It was cool, but
how do you not let it make
they
Voltron?
don't form Voltron. They don't form Voltron before the shield comes down, and then they get killed before they can.
How do you let that happen?
And I'm like, you form Voltron right now while you have you know what I mean? Like, that's the first thing you do. I guess that's the problem with the show. So maybe that was a joke about the show.
Yeah.
That they always wait forever to form Voltron until it's like the last possible second. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you know what we should do?
We should do that crazy thing where we always win.
Yeah, we should do that thing that always makes us kill this thing that we're struggling with. So maybe it was a joke about that, which, if so, okay. But it was funny that it was like they didn't form Voltron, they all got killed, and then that never happened. So I would have loved to see Voltron, you know, I don't know, even for the bad guys, like kicking some ass.
If Voltron's in the movie, I'll also be stoked about that.
Yeah, it could be. So yeah, we get this little moment that's told in the third person, and it's kind of waved away because it's like, I don't know for sure that this happened, but I assume this is what happens. And we get the story about a droid, which we learn they all look like Johnny Five, which seemed like there was like a flimsy reason for that, but it was just kind of fun to imagine. Yeah. Have you seen Johnny Five?
Yeah.
Do you know this reference?
Yeah, Short Circuit.
Short Circuit. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Which, I mean, that whole movie, I learned later, has got some pretty terrible racist things going on with it, but I didn't know that as a kid.
I haven't seen
I just
it in
enjoyed
such
it.
a long time. I mean, you can tell me about it later.
I don't know if it's in all of them, but it might be. But the main character, who's like an Indian guy, do you remember this? The main guy?
So vaguely
in the movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's not actually Indian. He's a white man and brown face.
Oh shit!
Acting Indian.
Jesus, man.
Yeah. I don't know if it's all brown face or if it's just like he's acting Indian and like made to look kind of Indian.
Awful.
But it's a white
Real
dude.
bad idea.
I did not know that as a kid.
Yeah.
So
real bad idea.
You know what I mean? Like, but yeah. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. That's what I've heard since. Anyway, the movie, you know, whatever. 80s were a terrible time in some ways. And so this droid rolls into an armory, gets this mega bomb, takes it up into this place where all of these high-level wizards are, and the guy who's operating the artifact, and detonates and vaporizes all of them, which lowers the shield, and the battle commences. You know, I don't want to necessarily do a complete play-by-play here, but basically, we already said all the mechs get destroyed before they can form Voltron on the Sixer side. They're really outnumbered, and the clans are all there, and all of these people are like basically slaughtering them. The only difference being Mechagodzilla is basically invincible, and is able to just like wreak havoc, right? And Sorrento's in that one. And there is a joke gets made by H where he's like, I guess we got to the final boss, and it's a bit of lamp shading again because it totally is like set up just like a video game final boss, right?
Definitely. So like they kind of talked about before, like if hopefully at least 3 of them can make it into the gate, up to the gate, because they realized that they needed 3 people to do the keys at the same time. So all 4 of them are kind of like fighting, but also trying to get to the gate.
Yeah, and then Shoto's like, I'll distract him, you guys go on, essentially. Shoto takes them on one-on-one. They all go. H and Artemis get through the gate, but then
Shoto,
is fighting, and Parzival like turns around to kind of like see what happens, and Shoto gets cuts off Mechagodzilla's arm in like a really cool like attack, and then for some reason just like flies straight at the gate and then gets destroyed, which I thought, like, considering how good of a gamer Shoto is, it felt like I don't know, kind of a silly moment to me that he would get taken out like that, but narratively it works, right?
Right.
So Shoto's avatar gets killed, and
Parzival's like,
Wade,
not today.
Yeah, and also Wade's he gets taken his mech gets blasted too by the like lightning attack that he used, that Sorrento used, and so he ends up popping the
beta capsule,
the beta capsule, and forms Ultraman, and then fights Mechagodzilla. So
pretty sweet.
There you go.
Pretty sweet.
So that's fun. They have this big fight, and so it's also kind of like, it's almost, I don't know, it's almost a selfish moment, but he also like kind of justifies it as like he needs to have Sorrento publicly humiliated for everything he's done. But what he could have done is just gone into the gate and been like, fuck it.
Yeah.
But instead he takes on Sorrento, right?
He wrecks him too, like easily.
Yeah, he basically slaughters them. Sorrento blasts off Mechagodzilla's head as like an escape thing, and he like tries to fly away, and then he just like shoots it out of the sky,
killing Sorrento's avatar.
And kills Sorrento's avatar. Yeah, so him and Shoto is not dead. It's his avatar got killed, and same thing with Sorrento.
So my thing was this is something that I had a question because I figured eventually somebody's avatar would die. If your avatar dies, couldn't you just start a new character, level 1, and just go back to exactly where you were and hopefully be able to pick up your gear or something?
I mean, someone else is probably going to collect it. You can't travel. Like, traveling is so hard. You wouldn't have any money. I don't think it'd be easy to get back to like some sector, like literally across the all of the Oasis. But theoretically, if your stuff could sit there untouched, I think you could like Dark Souls-esque, like if you got back to your bloodstain, like literally pick up your stuff.
Right.
I guess you could. Probably
I just figured that because there's this they kind of just in this situation for the rest of the book, anybody who dies gets they just stand there and talk to Parzival, and I'm just like, why don't you go respawn in a new avatar and try to do something?
I think it would just take too long. I think is the implication to get back to there.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, he's done that, and he goes inside, and they all know their little order. They're going to do things, and they put in their keys, and they turn them together, and they open the gate, and then they're getting ready to go in, and then everybody dies, and Wade's avatar gets killed. And how surprising was this moment?
I was like, oh shit! I freaked out for sure. I did not expect. I knew the bomb was going to go off eventually, and I actually kind of thought for a second that the Johnny Five robot had the crazy bomb, but
right.
When this went off, I was just like, okay, so now what? Like, is he gonna be able to restart and get in there and go get all the keys again really quick? And
yeah. So instead, we find out that he gets at the game over screen instead of your usual game over. He instead gets you have an extra life. Would you like to use it or whatever?
Yeah.
And we find out that he has an extra life, which came from the coin that he got at the center of Arcade. From completing Pac-Man. So, yeah, what did you think of that?
I incorrectly predicted this. I didn't know what the coin was for, but
that's okay. I mean, it's hard to know. It's a bonus life,
but I mean,
it makes sense.
I thought it was pretty interesting. There's something about this story where when he's setting up for something, you can kind of tell a decent amount of the time. I'm not going to say all the time,
sure,
but with the coin. I don't know. There's just a certain amount of predictability, but that also goes along with what you were saying before. It depends on what kind of story you're trying to tell. And
this book isn't very subtle.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not. You know what I mean? It is kind of obvious a lot of the stuff that happens, or at least that something like that's going to happen.
And I almost wouldn't want it to because a subtle. I don't know that there is a place to be subtle and also have Ultraman fighting Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's I think it fits for the story.
Okay, so he is the only, Wade is the only one who survives because of this. Everyone else is dead, and then Og puts Artemis and Shoto and H into his ears so that they can see what he's doing and talk to him. And they're like, why the fuck did you live? What's up? And he reveals how what happened, how he got the extra life, and how he kind of forgot about it, didn't even know what it would do. And I like this. This is revealed that literally half the population of Oasis died in that blast. So, if you had this bomb, this is the ultimate way to use it, I guess. Yeah. It's for the maximum damage it could possibly be dealt. The entire castle at Anorak has also been destroyed, taken down to its foundation. And all gear is gone, we learn, and Wade is there, and he has none of his stuff. He only has his starting attire. He's the same level, but he doesn't have any of his items. And so he can't fly up to the gate. Which I don't know, I feel if I had an extra life, yet I still lost all of my gear, I'd be pretty pissed. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
I guess it's cool that it preserves your avatar level, but that's a shitty half measure. You still lose all your gear.
Right. You should be able to at least pick up your gear or something, but I guess it all got destroyed besides the artifacts, we find out.
Yeah, the bomb. That's true. I guess you would normally be able to pick up your own gear, but the bomb literally kills everything. Right. But yeah, we learned that the artifacts are indestructible, and that if there are any artifacts on the field, those are the things that you can use. So he goes around and he finds the beta capsule, but he can't use it again because it was a one-time per day use. Because he needs to fly up to where the door is. He can't reach to the door. And he also learns that the Sixers knew this was going to happen. This was their plan. That was why they detonated the bomb.
They wanted to learn how to open the gate from Parzival, basically.
Yeah, and then you detonate the bomb before they can go in. So this was like another part of their plan, which is pretty smart. And then so they have these people in the next nearby sector who are like flying over as fast as possible. So it's a race against the clock. Artemis reveals that her chucks are actually like some sort of artifact that make you have like super speed and fly. So that's really cool. And he goes and gets those and uses them to get up to the gate. Goes into the gate.
Well, before he goes into the gate, he says he like makes this like grand announcement that he's going to share any money, anything that he wins from this. He's going to share it with all of the High Four.
Yeah, he's going to split the prize money. I think he, I guess implied is also like control the company and all that stuff too, but I feel like maybe he should have also said that.
Yeah.
But he just says prize money, so maybe not. Maybe he's retaining control of the company. But a lot of his wealth, a lot of Halliday's wealth is tied up in the company, I would think. Yeah. So it's probably, like, you can't separate those two. But I think it would have been cool for him to be like, we're going to form a, like a council to run the Oasis or something like that. You know what I mean? Would also kind of been cool, but maybe too businessy for this book. They agree to it. And he says basically because he couldn't have gotten this far without them and it wouldn't have been right for him to claim it for himself. Mm-hmm. But of course he does get the glory.
Yep.
So inside the gate, we find out that he's playing Tempest,
which is crazy.
Which a game we played at Ground Control. Did you realize that from the description of the game?
Yeah, no, I totally remembered. I was wondering. I was like, damn. You didn't remember that this one was in the movie, did you? We just happened to play it.
So I honestly had like a vague, like Joust was the only game for sure I knew was in there, and Pac-Man. Mm-hmm. But my other memories of what the games were, because they're all games I'd never played before, You know what I mean? I was like, I think this one, and I think that one. So no, I didn't remember it specifically, but I did, I think you even said, like, this might be one of the ones from the book as we played it. Yeah. And it totally was. I didn't remember that it was the final gate one, you know what I mean? And all that.
I'm glad we played it. It's so goddamn hard, though. I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah. So we find out that there's this exploit you can do where if you die at a certain score, you get 40 lives. And I wondered if the one at Ground Control, if you can do this exploit, you know what I mean? I wonder, or probably not, but it was a devoted Tempest system, not, as you know, the Joust was actually in a multi-Williams thing where it was like multiple games. Mm-hmm. Their Tempest was not like that. Like it was a standalone Tempest game.
With the wheel, the, dial, everything. It was awesome.
So yeah, if you ever want to play this game in its like real form, go to Ground Control in Portland. So yeah, he does that. He gets 40 lives, and he starts working through it because we learned that this isn't a game he's very good at. It wasn't one he's really practiced. Mm-hmm. And like Artemis gives him some shit about it because he doesn't. He should have known.
One of the clues like was basically about Shakespeare's The Tempest, and then it like he should have known that it was The Tempest.
Yeah, and that was something he missed. So he has to rely on their help, I guess, for this. He also learns as he's doing it that he's actually being broadcast. Like there's like a little video of him doing this next to his name on the high score list. That happens for anybody who enters. And so because of that, they also know that about 10 different Sixers have now shown up and are starting to do the same thing. So he's like in a race against them to do it. He is able to beat Halliday's high score, which is his one requirement, and then completes this section, and we find out that this is like a multi-part gate, I guess. And so the next part is, I think maybe the like silliest, but I don't know. He saves it for the very end, I guess, but it's the most like in your face moment because it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which like everybody's seen, and he literally does a flick sync with that, which I think would be a very popular movie for this probably. Yeah. What did you think of this part? I mean, was it more just like, oh, cool, this is a great reference, or was it like too much?
No, man, it was never too much for me. I was all on board, and I actually, as soon as I finished the book, rewatched Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like literally just finished it a couple hours ago. Yeah,
I fucking love that movie. It's so funny, man. That's awesome.
I hadn't seen it in like 5 to 10 years. Like it had been a long time, so I was like, I got to jump back in. It's been too long.
Oh man, such a good movie. Anyway, so yeah. I'm glad then. I think for me, even the first time I read it, I remember like this was the only time where it was like almost too much.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is also to the narrative, where the narrative's at and the high tension and the like race to the end aspect of it. It feels kind of like it comes to a halt as he's doing this silly movie and making all these jokes. And there's even a part, and it's kind of fun to hear Will Wheaton do the voices, but in the audiobook, Will Wheaton literally recites like a whole scene from the movie almost. I don't know, like narratively, like a lot of the tension kind of evaporates in this moment, but it is like this funny reveal, and it's at the end of the book. So if you're going to do it, this is the time, I guess. But yeah, ultimately, I guess it does work for me, but it's probably just because I love the movie.
I think that's what it was. Is like ultimately like this is how I was like less excited than when I found out about the Blade Runner thing was my favorite reference, I think probably. But like okay, cool. I've been really happy about each of the keys and the gates. I've even if I don't know it, I find it cool how he's able to thread all this stuff together to be clues, and I don't know.
It's funny too because you also have to picture Sorrento doing all of the Monty Python lines and stuff I don't know. It's kind of funny for me to imagine him doing this stuff sometimes.
That's what I was saying, and like you get bonus score for like the inflection. So like, is he actually maybe he is like a huge '80s fan too? Like he would have to be.
Yeah. Well, he was a game programmer, he said before this. So, like, his credentials are that, yeah, I guess he is, like, really good at this stuff. He's just doing it for an evil organization. Right. But, yeah. So, and then the final section he gets to, after he completes that, is he gets into this warehouse. And in this room, in the order of how they came out, is, like, all the gaming systems ever made. And it's like a recreation of Halliday's study or something. And it's a lineage of all the gaming systems, right? And it goes from like the very first computers to the Oasis through all of the consoles, right? And he thinks, okay, the Easter egg is hidden in this room somewhere. He finds out that he has no communication anymore with H and them, which like I was like, couldn't they just pop their head into the room and talk to him IRL if they really wanted to talk to him? But they're like, oh, we can't talk to him, but he's like a room over.
Yeah. Well, maybe he just has like funny ears. He has like something in his, like the Oasis goes over his ears or something. But yeah.
So like literally can't hear someone speaking to him in the same room?
Yeah.
Maybe. But anyway, yeah, I thought it was kind of funny because you just pop an earbud out and listen to someone talk to you, I guess. But so anyway, he can't have any communication. It's more dramatically interesting. He boots up an old computer. He gets a login prompt, and basically he has to come up with the password. And he tries all these different things, and then he remembers the story that Ogden told, and he thinks about how Halliday loved Kiera. And so he tries Kiera, but that doesn't work. And then eventually he realizes that in part of his backstory is that Halliday was such a weird, awkward guy that he always referred to her by her D&D character's name. And then so he enters that, and that is the password.
Yeah. So I don't know how you felt ultimately about like where all the love stories and that kind of stuff landed, but I actually did find like the Ogden Halliday Kiera thing like pretty interesting, and ultimately I think that where the story ends up, because of their story, the context of their story, kind of at the very end, like it's not like it's built up very like super well, but I feel like at the very end it even made Percival and Artemis's story a little more gave it a little more depth, I feel like. But it was right at the very end, it was just like boom, here, now let's make this more powerful.
So you're saying there's another moment at the end that made you think of it? Well,
just the idea that now at the end that they're trying to like draw correlations between like how Halliday's like, I spent too much time worrying about this stuff, and like I loved Kiera and this and that, and like he didn't, you know what I mean? He was so involved in that he never went to like live a full life, and he kind of says to Percival.
So you're talking a little bit about the next scene,
right,
but yeah.
We'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah, well, that's fine. So yeah, in the next scene, he goes up because he's completed it now, and like a door opens. He goes up a staircase, and he talks to literally Anorak, Halliday's avatar, and he like shakes hands with him, and he says like, you've completed the game or whatever. Shakes hands with him, and like all of his powers transfer to Parzival now,
including his clothes,
including his robe and everything. Yeah,
so I imagine like a young man with a full wizard gear on.
Yeah. And then, so Halliday's avatar returns to just like street clothes, and he has this conversation with him, and he's like, I hope, first off, I hope you use this for good. And then he says like, make sure you don't lose yourself in this simulation kind of thing. And it kind of says, the real world, is the only place where anything real happens. And, don't ever forget that, like I did. Did you think that that's kind of, did you take that away as the message of this book, or is that more just like lip service?
I don't think that was the message of this book. I think that it was it's a good thing to say at the end, because it is definitely true. And I think that the implication is that Percival will have a more full like whole life than Halliday had because of his experiences and the things that he's get in a second, like the things that he realizes, like, oh, there is stuff going on out here and things are important.
Yeah, and it's like a cautionary thing to like everything in moderation, right? Which is always good, and it's like, enjoy the oasis, but don't do it in lieu of having a life outside of it, I guess, right?
Right.
So it's a bit of both. It's like, we all love this thing, but make sure you don't let it become your entire life, because ultimately that'll be kind of empty.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he kind of regrets it.
Last little oasis thing here before we move on. You want to talk about Chekhov's gun? The thing that he reveals to him at the end, and to have that do nothing.
The giant button.
Yes. He's like, Halliday reveals this giant red button that only he has access, that only Halliday and now Percival has access to, that can just shut down the entire oasis. Which I was like, okay, why reveal that? I mean, I guess maybe for a sequel, but like, why reveal that if you're not going to shut down I was like, when he revealed it, I was like, okay, so he's going to shut down the oasis and he's going to force everybody to live in the real world and try to make things better in the real world. And then he doesn't. And it's just a red button that was shown up for really never.
It's the idea that if this simulation gets out of hand ever, it's like an escape button. It's and it gives him the ultimate power to shut it all down if he needs to. Yeah, I guess I can see where you're coming from. Like, why introduce it if it's not going to be used? But it's also like a power thing for Wade too. Like, he has the power if he needs to where if this really.
Well, I think that was assumed. Like, I just thought that was assumed that, like, now that he has control of the company, that, like, if he wants to, he could shut it all down. He didn't necessarily need a red button that would do it.
Big red button. But I mean, it's all ready to go, and all you got to do is accidentally hit it or something. I guess I can see what you're saying, but and it's interesting that he doesn't reveal it to the others. Like, he keeps that bit for himself. At the end, right? Like, he doesn't mention it to them because they didn't see this part.
Yeah, I don't think. No, he says, "I'll tell you about it later," though.
Does he? Okay, so he is going to tell him eventually, but maybe he just wants to keep it more secret, just between them. But yeah, because maybe the idea that he has this power, if that got out, it would be like too much for people to know that he can do that.
It would be a whole new Easter egg, maybe for another story, for another novel.
Yeah, who knows, man? We can talk about it at the end, but there is rumors that he's working on Ready Player 2, and could this potentially be part of what's in that plot line? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. So he has this like God moment where he goes out into the battlefield and all of the Sixers have been spit out, and he now like can just like snap his fingers and they all die. And then he because he's level infinite. He has like billions of dollars. He has all these new abilities. He can do whatever he wants. Now this also kind of ruins the game. I don't know about you, man, but like,
what do you do?
People like I always feel like this sounds cool. But then you're going to be like...
It's just cheat codes. Yeah, it's cheat codes. When you type in your cheat codes, it's not fun anymore.
But on the other hand, you're also playing in something that has become essentially reality. So it's like if you had cheat codes in real life...
Yeah. I mean, I guess...
And you're the only one who can have them. That's pretty... you're going to have fun with that, I guess. He become a superhero.
He has to play God in this world now. He has to like decide new things to create and new things to do.
He can never go back to just being an avatar now, though. Like, he is this now, right? So yeah, it changes his experience with it for sure. But yeah, he does that, and he's able to do that, and in like cosmic timing, of course. We also learned that Sorrento's getting like hauled out of the IOI offices and being arrested to be put on trial for the murder and all this stuff. So it's like kind of funny because it's like, well, if he had won, wouldn't this still have happened? And like, you know what I mean? So I guess he would have had more money because he would have won the contest and he would have the money to like maybe bail himself out. There's also an implication that he's going to get away scot-free anyway.
Right.
So he could potentially be a bad guy in another book if there is another one. Oh, he also resurrects all of their avatars. That's the last thing he
with
does
all their gear, yeah.
He resurrects, which is actually kind of interesting. So he resurrects the High Four's avatars, but not everyone else's.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'd be kind of pissed if I participated in that battle, my avatar got killed by the bomb, and then I didn't get a free life out of it, and I knew that could have happened. You know what I mean? Even if I didn't do a lot, I'd still be like, hey, come on.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, for sure.
Yeah, I would think he would restore everybody who died. Maybe that would be too hard to do, because he had to like list the names by hand and like spell them correctly and everything. So he could potentially do that in the future, I guess. but it would be a long process, so that makes sense. But anyway, so he exits the Oasis, and he's like, because he finds out that Artemis wants to meet him, and she's at the center of this like hedge maze in IRL.
I thought it was gonna be the hedge maze from The Shining, by the way.
Oh yeah, that would.
I was like, he's gonna throw one more out at the very end.
The Shining of all, like we'll end on a Shining reference. Yeah. Maybe a little bit too dark for this. Sure. Instead, I guess it's shaped like the game Adventure. Which is like one of the first games and with the first Easter egg and all this stuff. Oh, that's also, I forgot, that he has to play Adventure to get the actual egg at the end. It's very brief, but that is actually on the computer when he unlocks it. That's how he gets the egg. He has to play Adventure, and then he finds the Easter egg.
Yeah, after Monty Python, he goes into that area that was like all the old game consoles, and he plays Adventure.
And he has to put in the code.
And he goes to the Easter egg spot where the first programmer put his name because they wouldn't let him. We talked about it in another episode.
In our first episode, yeah. Sorry, I somehow blew over that. Anyway, so they have this moment where they kind of look at each other for the first time in real life, say some sappy things to each other, and she kisses him, and they, it's a little bit like, you got to get to know me and all this stuff, but he's all head over heels and like, yeah, I want to marry you, basically. He doesn't say that, but he wants to be with you forever and all this stuff, so. Professes his love. He gets the girl in the end, and we cap off this kind of ultimate wish fulfillment thing, right? Like it's everything possibly that could go right for Wade does, and it ends on this kind of sweet note where they're kind of together. Yeah, he finds that he has no desire to log back into the Oasis is the other thing that it ends on, because he's found this like real life connection. Right. So I think that's also an interesting subversion of the overall plot of the book of like, this is all badass and awesome, is the idea that like now that he has like a real life connection outside of it, he doesn't feel the need to go back.
Right.
And they decide they're gonna he wants to help the world. He's like come over to her side now. He doesn't want to do his like spaceship plan anymore. Now he wants to save the world and do humanitarian efforts and all this stuff, right?
Help the environment, get rid of world hunger, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's the end of the novel. So, do you want to go over some final thoughts, and then I have some final questions for you.
So, final thoughts. I really enjoyed the story. I can totally understand if people don't enjoy it quite as much as I did. There are things in it that I think we've agreed could have leaned into certain things more.
Well, what about this ending scene in particular too? Before we get past this, like, what did you think of this final scene with?
Like I was saying before. I felt like with the context of the relationship of Og and Kiera, and Halliday in there as well, you see like the importance of, even though Halliday loved all this stuff and created all this stuff, he was like a hermit that didn't take part in real life, and you kind of see that like he's learning from his mistakes or his examples. Like Percival's learning from Halliday's mistakes or examples, and he's like saying like he has no desire to go back to the Oasis and he wants to do humanitarian things, which like Halliday could have done rather than creating a contest. You know what I mean? Like when he knew he was dying, he could have tried to save the world before he died or something.
Right. Why wasn't Halliday already doing all this stuff? Yeah, I mean, this, like I said, wish fulfillment. This is the happily ever after ending for Wade. He does kind of win the girl in kind of a tropey, cliched way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, she is kind of the ultimate prize at the end, which is kind of dehumanizing. I've seen criticism where people say that she's a pretty flat character, but I would argue that everybody is in this book, other than maybe Wade. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everybody in this book is not a super round, realized individual. They all are fairly, they have parts to play in this story. Definitely. And they all play their parts, right? So, if you want to say that he's not great at characterization in general, I think that's a fair criticism, but otherwise, I think she is an okay character. She's very capable. She's good at her video games. There's a strong implication that she could have won this whole thing if she had got the extra life. You know what I mean? Like, she was just as good as him, I guess. And I think their relationship, I think you can be jaded and look at it as from his point of view and say that it's all male oriented and stuff. But I felt like there was a genuine connection there that was earned over shared interests and all that stuff. So, and there are people who have relationships that start over video games and stuff, and absolutely you can find common ground in gaming and that sort of thing. So people, get married to people they meet on World of Warcraft. Yep. So it happens.
Definitely.
And I think that this is a fair representation of how that kind of romance can go down, I think.
Yeah, I kind of think of this story in the sense of like a John Hughes film, where it's like almost like high school. There's the main character, the best friend, and like, yes, I agree that like subverting these characters and the tropes that come along with them would have been more powerful and would have meant more. And like, as much as that isn't very forward thinking, that's kind of the lens that I see this through. And I think that's part of the reason why I enjoy it. It's because I kind of just put that lens on it.
And recognize that's what this is. So I have two big things I want to talk about here at the end. I want to talk about the controversy and backlash to this book, and I want to talk about the contest that Ernest Cline put on in his novel. Okay. What order do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about the controversy.
Or do you think
we're kind of, we were talking about it some.
Save the contest for the end. The contest is really fun. So if, stay tuned for that. We'll just briefly get into the controversy. I read some interesting stuff about it. So the backlash to this book seems to be all caught up in Gamergate, which we mentioned in our first episode. When this book came out in 2011, it was basically like people liked it. It was fun. It was like, oh, this is a very light popcorn beach read kind of book and whatever. It's just like culture didn't really react to it. But in 2015, Gamergate happened, where a bunch of really shitty man babies all got really upset about women being in gaming and like criticizing and wanting feminist games and wanting inclusive games, and got really nasty and like, death threats, rape threats, and it like really kicked off. People were harassed and all this stuff, right? And then what happened is people started to realize and identify this book as kind of the quintessential distillation of gaming and like white guy nerd culture. And the idea that the book is literally about the biggest nerd getting through gates that keep out people who are not as big of nerds. So the book, in a sense, can be said to be all about gatekeeping, which is the whole thing about Gamergate, is that you have to pass these tests and prove that you're a true nerd, you know what I mean?
Right.
And all this shit that they were saying people weren't able to do, and that people of color and that women are not true nerds for this or that reason. And so it was all about gatekeeping. And so the idea that this book like somehow represents that, it's got a white guy main character who wins saves the world by being the biggest nerd and proving himself in a series of tests. And he gets the girl, and it's very, like we've talked about a lot of the problems along the way, but in the lens of that, people started to view this book, what I mean, as like that thing, like wish fulfillment for the white guy nerd who just wants to get the girl and doesn't care.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know if I'm doing. I could do a better job at explaining that and like all the reasons that this book I think represents that to people. But that's the gist of it, I guess. And what do you think about that?
I can definitely see that as a perspective on this story, and it just sucks because it's like there's certain groups within gaming that are very toxic, period. And then you group that with the fact that like a lot of them go out of their way to be hurtful and stuff. And I've always seen gaming and community gaming as like something that should be inclusive. It's something that like you have more fun when you're playing with other people, and the idea of, oh, I have more knowledge, so I'm better, and that kind of thing. Like, I don't know. I get that there's like a competitive nature to it and that kind of thing, but it's just really unfortunate because a group like that was able to, and it is, like you said, it's gatekeeping. It's telling people of color, people of a certain gender, and that they can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. And I just think that like I can definitely see where this represents that. But I would say that I don't think that Ernest Cline is the kind of person to be like gatekeeping towards, towards a certain group of people. I think that his book just happens to be about that kind of stuff, and it's unfortunate connection that was made.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I kind of follow a similar way. Like I don't know a lot about Ernest Cline. I haven't heard him talk about this in particular. I'd be interested to see if he's addressed it. But to me, like I said, I don't think this book is at all supportive of that, way of thinking. I think it's completely the other side of it. And there's nothing in here that says, you should harass people and like be toxic about it. it's more of celebratory, right? It's more about like a shared interest. Now, you could say the things he's celebrating are often these backwards movies and such that weren't inclusive. So maybe it's all bound up in it, but I don't know. Like I said, I think at its heart, this book is trying to be forward thinking. I think it's trying to reach out to people who are maybe sheltered and don't think about other people and broaden their horizons. But I don't know. I mean, it's a cultural thing, and the fact that this book kind of became the scapegoat of that. Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I don't feel that bad for Ernest Cline because he's got plenty of money and he's got plenty of fame. But it also kind of sucks that your book has now become this like poster child of this thing, right? And that people fight over it when they're really fighting about Gamergate and they're fighting about white guy gamers and how toxic that can be. And that all gets bound up in your book somehow, and you never really intended it to be that. Like I feel like I'd be pretty upset about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to put that out there because I think a lot of people, like we said, if you have a different background, you pick up on that more quickly, I think, than we probably did. And yeah, especially now in the light of Gamergate, that's a big issue. I do think there's a chance for Spielberg to maybe do something with this movie to maybe handle some of this stuff better. So I'll be interested to see if he does, or if it's just kind of more of the same. You know what I mean? But like, I hope that maybe something about this movie can take a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that'd be cool
for this story.
Yeah, if he leaned into some of the things that in 2011 Ernest Cline didn't, it would be really cool.
Yeah, and then we'll see because apparently Armada came out right in like the middle of Gamergate, and Ernest Cline got like that book got panned basically because of this whole gamer thing. And it was like more, because it was very much like, I haven't read it, but supposedly it's very much gamer wish fulfillment, another kind of book, a lot like Ready Player One. And people were not ready to just be like, oh, this is a fun bit of nerd. You know, it's more like this is really toxic.
Right.
And you know, and whether or not that's fair, I don't know. I haven't read the book. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see if he, you know, his next novel, what if he comes at it from a slightly different way and does something to subvert that thinking or not. I don't know.
I'm sure he'll do something, because if he does, you know what I mean? If he does believe that his book is being skewed in that way, he'll do something, because it seems like he's making strides to open those people who are like, you know, narrow-minded and think in a certain, that this book is representative of that. Like the people who are seeing it and seeing, oh, I should be toxic towards others. I think that he'll punch back against that and kind of just like,
well, and we should say that there are people like that. I've seen some of it on Twitter. Like there literally was a guy who tweeted, and of course it got picked up because of how like outrageous it was, but he was saying something like, I think it was an article that someone published that was like, Ready Player One is poised to be the Black Panther for geeks. And
crazy.
That's just so wrong-headed, and so like it's so ridiculous to say that. And so when people are doing that, like you can obviously see there's going to be a huge backlash against that. Of like, are you kidding me? Geeks are not a race that's been
historically
subject to all this historical. Yeah. Anyway,
crazy, man.
It sucks. And whenever I see that, I'm like, oh my god, you're making it all worse by doing shit like this. Because like I don't view this book at all like that. Like it's just to me a bit of fun popcorn. You know what I mean? Like it's not trying to be all this other stuff. Yeah. And it's kind of unfortunate, I think, that it got caught up in this kind of culture clash, and you know, whether fairly or unfairly, I guess that's, you know, up for people to debate. Because often, you know, Star Wars has this too. Like it gets dragged into these things, and everybody looks at it from a different lens and uses it as a weapon to attack each other, right, and all this stuff.
Yeah, man. Crazy world we're living in.
When we aren't going to solve it all on this podcast. We are two white guys, so, you know, everything we say, take with that grain of salt.
Definitely.
But let's move on to the contest, I think, because the contest is a bit of fun that I think everyone can enjoy. Yeah.
So tell me about this.
So I this is a bit spoilers. If you want to like find out about it yourself, don't listen to this part, I guess. But there is some misspelled words, and I don't know exactly what they were, but there's some misspelled words in the book itself. And apparently, if you can use those misspelled words to spell out a web address. You go to this web address, and actually, I can give it to you. Yes, okay. So the web address is anoraksalmanac.com, and it's spelled like anorak from the book. You go to that, and there is an old Atari game called The Stacks, and it's made to look like Atari, but it's called The Stacks, like the stacks in the book, right? And you click on it, and apparently it's a game that you can play, and you have to beat it. And when you beat it, you like, I think you have to beat the entire game. You unlock the gate, which takes you to the next part of the game. The next part of the game is a game that was developed by this, like, apparently he's like a famous game designer who, I don't know I didn't recognize his name, but he's a big deal game designer who actually designed this next game. The next game is like you have to build a DeLorean, like literally like time traveling DeLorean, without like spending any money or something. And you're like in a garage and like all this stuff. It all looks like, I've seen like screen caps of it. It all looks like very 8-bit and like retro looking.
Wow.
And so you have to build this DeLorean, and so people did this, and people unlocked this next part, and then you had to send at the end of this, you have to send like a screen cap of you. It's a very hard game.
It sounds like
but,
it.
You have to send a screen cap of you at the end screen, and then that got you qualified for the final phase, the third phase of this contest, which was you had to set the new world record for one of like 6 games. And it was like Pac-Man, Joust, Tempest, Black Tiger, and like all games from this. You had to set a world record. You had to be one of these people who did all this, and then you had to set a new world record on one of these games. Man. And the first person to set a world record in one of those games of high score won the prize, which ended up being a copy of the DeLorean from the book that Ernest Cline actually has, like with the ghost busting on the side and all that stuff, and that was the
so
prize he gave out to the person
that would
who did
be
it.
impossible to do.
And a guy did it, and he set it on Joust.
He did it on Joust. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, on Joust.
That's so cool.
The guy who actually ended up winning it.
I can't believe that, man. That's insane. That's such a, like, I thought it was going to be like win a couple games, win like 1 or 2 games, and it was like set a world record, be the highest score of all time.
You had to do all this stuff, and then you had to set a world record on one of those
Unbelievable.
games to win the contest.
So crazy.
Yeah.
I hope it was worth it, because that sounds like a lot of time. The DeLorean is pretty sweet.
That's so cool though, right?
That's awesome.
And yeah, he had 2 video games made. Like the Stacks was not a real game. Like it was an Atari game that he had made. And then he had this other game made that you only could unlock through doing these things. Like I don't know, it's really cool.
Awesome, man. I love when people go the extra mile like that to add something to their releases or kind of just ARG stuff. Is so cool.
Absolutely, man. So I guess all we have left to talk about is this movie. That's going to be next up. We're gonna see this movie. We're going to compare it to the novel. We're going to talk about all this stuff again. What are you most excited for the movie?
I mean, I'm excited to see this in general. I'm excited to see the references that Spielberg decides to go with rather than the Cline references, just because I'm assuming there'll be a lot of differences. I'm hoping that I have as much fun that I did with the book. I'm hoping it's that much fun. And I mean, I love Spielberg, man. I love Spielberg. Some of his newer stuff isn't as incredibly groundbreaking as like, his ETs and his like Close Encounters and Jaws. And so I would love to see like a return to form where he's like really, I love that he's diving into another like adventure film, because I feel like that's his bread and butter. And so I'm just excited.
Yeah, man. Me too. I like I said, I have high hopes, and I hope that this movie does something to kind of bridge the divide here now. And it's unfortunate because, just to reference back to the controversy a little bit, like I feel like there's a bit of a kind of shitty implication that can get made that if you're a fan of this book, that, you know what I mean, that you're like ignorant of all these problems and that you are maybe even support this kind of shit. Yeah. Like there's the unfortunate retroactive thing of like you can be labeled as supporting something that you don't necessarily, just because you like this book.
Well, I hope that listening to this coverage, people realize that we understand and acknowledge some of that stuff, and there's been toxicity in both directions, but ultimately, like, there are some valid things that could have been done to make this a little stronger and more forward thinking, but it's also not a bad
I mean,
thing
I think
to like it.
most of the toxic stuff comes from one side,
Yeah.
but the rest is more defensive.
I think I want to retract that. I don't want to say that there was toxicity from both sides. I think there was toxicity mainly from one side, and then there's the idea that if you like it, you are like those people who are toxic.
Right. Which is, I think, just an unfortunate. It's like way of bringing in. I don't know if you want to call this book innocent, but kind of just this fun romp that's now this cudgel that will wield at each other. All right, so if you enjoyed this coverage, a good way to connect with us is on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, at Ink to Film on all three. We'd love to have you come connect with us, and we can talk about this book more. Yeah, definitely. And if you wanted to send us feedback in any way, if you liked things from Ready Player One, things you're excited to see in the movie, anything about our upcoming project, Fellowship of the Ring, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, and Fahrenheit 451, you can send that in. We have a Gmail. It's inktofilm@gmail.com, and we definitely read all the stuff that comes through there. And further, if you are enjoying this and you liked our coverage, the best way you can support us is to subscribe on whatever platform you use to listen to the podcast, and leave us a rating and a review. That really helps us to get our to raise our profile and get our podcast out there to more people, which is our goal. Yeah, and also, if you wanted to support the podcast, we also have a new newsletter that we recently released. Oh yeah, that you can subscribe to. There'll be a link in the description of this episode, and you can subscribe to get all the updates. Sometimes we put stuff on there early, or at least we're going to be putting stuff on there early before we even announce it on the podcast or on social media. So definitely subscribe to that. Lastly, we just want to say thank you to Audible. They gave us an affiliate link. It's audibletrial.com/ink2film. And with that, you get 30 free days to their service and one free audiobook in their collection. Yeah, and we wanted to say thank you to Crown Publishing, who provided us with copies of this book to raffle off, and movie posters that we raffled off as well. So big thank you to them. They really hooked us up for this project. Definitely. And thank you to TechnoX's royalty-free music for the use of our intro and outro music. Which is great, by the way. I'm really loving this one. It's a lot of fun. So go check out their stuff on YouTube and if you want to hear more of that song. Absolutely. All right, I think that's it. We're going to be returning next week with our movie episode, so we hope you come back for that. I mean, it's all been building up to this, so we hope you go see it and come check it out and listen to our episode. Until then, I'm Luke. And I'm James. Final gate complete.